Today, I'll be speaking with Bryn Bowen about the practical application of information governance. While sounding a bit technical, the idea is simple. Get the right information with the right covenant into the hands of lawyers just in time. A stumbling block is how much of this information is still printed. But despair not. According to a McKinsey report, which I linked below, we have vaulted 5 years forward in business digital adoption in a matter of 8 weeks during this pandemic. Welcome to Law Firm Weekly. It's really good to have you here. Bryn Bowen is the principal consultant at Greenheart Consulting Partners, a governance, risk, and compliance information consulting practice. Bryn worked for a number of prestigious law firms in New York, where he helped establish information governance programs, as well as records management and new business intake. Bryn, welcome to the studio.
Glad to be here, Shai.
So it's early in the morning, and we struggled a little bit through the frames per second issues that people encounter normally working from home, and this is really the context for everything that we're talking about nowadays, and that's distance work and working from home and all the challenges and the issues that law firms are facing in this context. But before we dive into what does it mean during this time to deal with and handle issues around information governance, maybe you can just give us like the quick elevator pitch as to what information governance is, just as a reminder for those who are not very familiar with it.
So information governance is a framework for managing all of the information within your enterprise or organization. It has its roots with the advent of big data, and the folks who manage information at large organizations at that time saw the need to develop a formalized to create framework for that. So what does that mean? It means that any information governance program has to involve all of the elements of the organization that either ingest or generate or create information for the organization. So, the hallmark of an IG program, and that's the shortened version, IG, is an IG steering committee.
Okay. So,
and that steering committee, by the way, consists of those major stakeholders.
okay, got it. So I think another way to look at it from the little that I understand about it is that there is in fact, a chain of governance associated and attached to a piece of content. Any piece of content can be a document, it can be obviously anything that is coming from a database, etc. At the end of the day, it's supposed to affect what? Is it affecting the quality of interaction between the lawyer and their client? What is the end result of having this chain of custody, and how this governance translates to value for the firm and their clients?
Right. So in the first instance, you want to make sure that your data governance program is pretty sound, because the old adage, bad data, not a good thing. The adage is actually a little more sophisticated than that, but I dumbed it down.
Not a good thing works.
So making sure that in the first instance, the sources of data are clean and the data itself is clean. And then venturing into making sure that there's proper delivery of that data. So in essence, we can boil this down to a lawyer in the service of their client needs to have the information based on good data available at the right time for the right purpose in service of the right client. And that is such a distillation of what goes into making that happen. It's mind-blowing.
So, let's talk about some practical scenarios in our time when law firms and lawyers are working remotely, they're working from home, obviously relying on systems. They get access to it, through whatever Citrix or whatever it is that allows them to log into the systems and data sources that the firm makes available normally for them. When it comes to this, when it comes to information governance, when it comes to what they can get their hands on that they can confidently use, Give us a scenario, true for our times, where if it works, it makes the interaction between the client and the lawyer smoother, less friction, more secure, more confident.
Right. So, obviously, the ability to collaborate with, confidence, and to minimize the degree of risk associated with that collaboration while enhancing the value of that collaboration is really the driver for that. And so, there are actually many tools out there, that have been, the usage of which have been ramped up considerably since this pandemic descended upon us. For example, in the collaboration tool space, Microsoft Teams, Skype, these are all, tools that have been used. I actually have a bit of a bias for Teams because, as a governance person, Teams rests on a SharePoint backend, or can rest on a SharePoint backend. And that allows the content that goes into the collaboration platform to be governed in a much more coherent and intuitive way.
So it's interesting that you've mentioned Teams. Obviously, it's widely adopted now as a collaboration tool for many organizations. I don't know how deep the penetration is in legal. I suspect it is reasonable, even though I do talk to law firms who are implementing competing collaboration tools. But what you're saying is the big advantage is that because it's kind of resting and the framework is what it is, some of the security, if not all of it, is inherited, and therefore the chance that a lawyer may seek information or documents or anything data that they want to use in their interaction with a client, will be following the rules that have been established in the firm, and that's basically the advantage of a system like that. So I'm assuming that, to infer from it and stating the obvious, any system that the firm is looking to implement, especially now, a deeper collaboration system, should support those kind of infrastructure practices. Is that common?
Precisely.
Is that common? Like, tools like HiQ and others that are making inroads, are they usually building it in?
Um, well, the qualified answer is yes, because you can do this with any sort of database platform, right? However, the ease of implementation varies from platform to platform. And I think that what particularly law firms where the practitioner's driver is their time. You want to make sure time is spent most efficiently, largely in the service of their client, not trying to figure out how to access things properly in order to service their client. And so, to the extent that a firm can roll out a platform, and by the way, when I say roll out, I mean in phases, using pilot groups, slowly, carefully, with lots of feedback to make sure that all of the issues that surround lawyer practice are being dealt with. So to the extent that they can roll that out, that's a premium situation to be in.
So, as a wrap up to our conversation, how would you describe a scenario, an exchange between a lawyer and their client? Or, you know what, between anyone and anyone that you would like to describe, and give some examples of the kind of content and information that would be exchanged that has been qualified to be safe and secure, and having the right track record in order to describe what it works, what it looks like when it works.
So so let's do a moonshot. Client calls the partner. As the client is calling the partner recognizes that this is client A calling, uh, opens their intranet to that client's intranet page. And on that intranet page will be a summary of all of the recent activity around that client, both internal to the firm and external. So what's this client doing in the industry, for example, will appear, as part of that intranet page, so that when the partner actually answers the phone, they are already on par with the client. So the client says, I need, here's what's happening in the world, in my world, and I need your advice on this. Immediately, the partner can see, well, yeah, this is actually happening, and here is how it is affecting your competitors. Here is what they're trying to do and not succeeding. Here's what they're not trying to do, which we are going to, because we will succeed. So already, the conversation has taken a completely different tone. There's no, let me get back to you in a couple of hours after I've done the research. It is all of this information is right in front of the partner, and they're able to respond real time to the client. That is transformational client service. In fact, the better scenario would be the partner calls the client and says, I see these trends in your industry based on what our firm is, our AI and analytics group is capable of producing. Are you aware? How would you like to approach? Here are some things that I suggest. Let's have a chat.
Right. So clearly, information governance, I'm stating the obvious probably, is intimately associated with knowledge management and the ability to have all this information at the fingertips of a lawyer discussing with their clients. Be proactive.
Absolutely. The hierarchy goes data, information, knowledge.
Right. So that obviously is a trend, and we know that it's important to pull all of that kind of 360 together, be proactive about it, be knowledgeable of the client. But I think where information governance come in is to make sure that you have confidence that that information is true and right, and that you have the right credentials to access it, and that you have the right framework to share it with your client. That's where the confidence
Precisely. This
Fantastic.
should all be happening behind the scenes, invisible to the legal practitioner.
I like the,
They really should.
sorry,
They really
I
should
really
only
like
care.
the idea of invisible, so it's transparent.
Right, exactly. And there's a lot of work that needs to go into it to make that happen. But it is certainly not, impossible. In fact, because of the tools that we're increasingly that are increasingly at our disposal, it's becoming easier and easier. The big trick is to make sure that all of our data is digitized and available,
Right.
so that we can link it and mix it and mash it.
Yes, it's kind of interesting that we're still talking about digitization in the year 2020.
Yes.
But it's the,
Well, in fact, so McKinsey just published a report that said the COVID crisis has accelerated the rate of digitization by 5 years. Now, think about that for a moment. You would have thought, well, we're a year or two at most away from true digitization. 5 years, they said, it's shrunk it. So, I mean, I guess this is one of the few happy side effects of COVID.
yeah, it's kind of interesting as I'm having conversations with many, the silver lining, and I hate using this term because the devastation of this pandemic is evident. But the silver lining in the context of efficiencies and what organizations have to do in general and the speed at which they do it is actually quite persistent through all of my conversations. So I'm not completely surprised. Well, Bryn, this is a really interesting topic, obviously becoming even more important now that lawyers are working remotely. And so for the next 12 months, 6 to 12 months, where there's going to be at least some measure of remote and distance working, this issue of governance is going to continue to be as important, if not more important. I want to thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. It was really a great pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure was mine, Shai. Always good to see you.